Welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. This is Will Baggett, Chief Development Officer at Emerging Executives, serving rising leaders in college athletics and beyond. Is your personal brand a reflection of your leadership potential? Well, look no further than our Executive Image Workshop, which has helped thousands master the art of professional presence, and we can do the same for your staff and student athletes. For more information, visit us on the web at www.execimage.org.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive and organizational leadership. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at 1Q Leadership. Our guest today is Curt Pires. Curt is the president of CAP Sports Group. Greetings, Curt. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Ty. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you on, Curt. I wanted to get you on here because of your experience, right? CAP Sports Group, you created it in 2004. And what it is a sport and entertainment media consulting business, which handles distribution and acquisition of programming content. And you have a number of clients, Conference USA, Southern Conference, the Western Athletic Conference, America East, among others. You worked with some independent schools. Before creating CAP Sports Group, you spent 15 years with ESPN, and you have roughly 36 years in the sports industry in a variety of positions. So I wanted to bring you on to talk about some of the things that are happening right now and that could potentially happen here in college athletics. Doomsday, right? I may be wrong about this, but doomsday in college athletics is if the football season is canceled, right? That's almost like a great equalizer across divisions in college athletics because of the revenue that football brings. Thinking about sports media and programming, lately with this coronavirus chapter in our world, we've seen how part of the industry is struggling to provide content. How do you think things will play out if the football season is canceled?
Well, Ty, I think first and foremost, I think that we will see college football played this coming fall in 2020, but I do think that we are in an industry that all parts have to plan for the unexpected or for other, situations, which would mean that there would be no college football this fall. If that were the case, and certainly we're not thinking it is going to be the case, but if that were the case, I think it would have major impact, right, on all the wheels of that, all the spokes on that wheel, and colleges and universities, as well as media companies, would be in for a very difficult third and fourth quarter financially, and the longer-term effects more so on college and university campuses than necessarily on the media campuses because of their other businesses that a lot of these media companies are involved in. We would look certainly towards seeing how that impact would affect those schools, and to see that in how would they balance their revenue and expenses through this very difficult time would be something that we would all have to take a look at.
And of course, when you talk about college athletics in terms of Division I FBS, from my limited knowledge, I would say revenue streams are money coming over from campus. You have sponsorships. You have donors. Obviously, you have attendance revenue from your live events, and you have revenue from media rights agreements. And when you talk about big time, Power 5 media revenue is a big part of what they, you can create your budget, and you can think years out or even leverage facilities knowing that you're getting a certain amount of money over a couple of years. That's probably hard to wrap your mind around if you're an athletic director or if you are the media company in terms of how things could play out. I mean, does that kind of thing get worked into a contract? I mean, I would probably call on a consultant such as yourself to advise me in terms of that part of if I'm a conference or something like that, right?
Yeah. We live in this age now where when you talk about the Power Fives, we have 4 out of the 5 that have their own television networks. Some are more established than others. And then the 5th one, meaning the Big 12, has done an agreement with ESPN to basically create their own network via the new ESPN Plus platform. So those conferences certainly are working in a situation where they have a revenue stream coming through for their own networks. But by the same token, the majority of a lot of their rights fees comes from their live games that they sublicense to networks such as ESPN or CBS or Fox. And that revenue certainly will be something that may be paused based upon their agreements with those entities if they were not able to deliver live games to those networks. But as we see through the revenue streams that these institutions are having and conferences are having, they're really working a year behind. And so revenue that they're seeing maybe for 2018 at this point in time. So there's still going to be revenue coming in and dispersed for events that took place in the past year. And then but at some point there will be a void, right? And so planning for that now is very important if this were to play out. And obviously you lose your ticket revenue, and you will also lose sponsorship revenue from the stadiums, and donors will be, an area that you will be looking towards to help you fill voids, but those numbers may not match up, correct? And then the institution's hierarchy on campus will have to take a look at how to subsidize or figure out ways to work with their athletic departments through this process so that they stay afloat. Obviously, there's been many, many surveys where athletic programs have varying levels of how they're doing financially. Some are making a profit, but that's a very small group. And then there's many who are breaking even or losing money depending upon their formulas that they use on those campuses. So I think that all hands will be on deck at every institution and in every conference office to figure out ways to minimize the financial outlook for these universities. And we hope it doesn't get to this, and we certainly hope that there's ways to work with all the smart minds they have on those campuses to figure out how to get through this stage, no different than any other major business in America who's also looking at these types of shortfalls, perhaps certainly in second quarter this year, but also in third and fourth quarter, depending upon, where they're at business-wise. Are they at full strength? Are they at half strength, or what have you? So there will be a lot of factors going into working on these college campuses in athletics to really figure out where they're going to be a year from now or in the next 6 months or so.
Right. I imagine without looking at books, I mean, a lot of college campuses are already stretched because they already support athletics, right? Up to 50 and 60 and 70% of an athletic budget is made by like student fees or however money comes from campus over to athletics. And I imagine the people who are making donations to campuses are probably going to be a little tighter after, the next few months also. So it just seems like when you talk about the industry, the sports industry, something like football season being canceled is kind of like a doomsday type situation. But more specifically in terms of media and media negotiations, is everything on hold? Because obviously who knows what the outcome is, and if you need to renegotiate something, if you know what I mean, like, do you say, okay, well, let's hold on and see where all the chips lie before we pick up where we want to go with the future?
I don't think you're going to see a pause in media negotiations, right? Because contracts that are in place now are going to have end dates, right? Now, with many of those agreements come stipulations to look at writing out a contract for additional years, but also to do a full renegotiation, or extension. And I do believe that there are certain contracts that are coming up here in the next couple of years with the Pac-12 and the SEC as well. And I do believe that those agreements the American Conference will probably be, which I've already started discussions, will probably stay on course, and probably looking at elements whereby if there were not live events in, in calendar year 2021 in college football, how do we factor in the best scenario to extend those rights to include in the new contract whereby all parties are made whole if they were to miss X number of games in 2020, that those games are made whole during the course of the agreement, which now agreements are it could be as long as 10 years. I do think that there will be ways that people will look to negotiate in such a way that as best possible scenario for both the media companies as well as the colleges and universities.
Right. You've seen, I think there are a couple professional leagues are currently working on or have done network deals.
And I think you're going to find some creative people looking at ways to make up for their losses, right? So it could be people have looked at all kind of scenarios of creating new content or more exclusive content or content for new platforms for these media companies. So I do think that a creative minds, when it comes to negotiating tables, will look to do deals or extend deals in such ways that all parties are feeling comfortable with what they agree to once those contracts get signed. So I do think that with this bump, certainly one of the worst ones we've ever seen in our country, in our lifetimes, hit us at this time. I do think moving forward, there'll be ways to work with all parties to make people whole and do the best they can to come out of this whenever we can have games under whatever conditions there are nationally through the government or the states for these colleges and universities.
There's a new normal, it seems like, right? I mean, you don't want to have the same setup. You want to actually now have in for some type of major. I imagine there were in contracts there were stoppage, things.
Right.
But
Language.
I imagine, right, exactly. But I imagine you want to have something in it about something like this because now there's probably a new.
Right. And so whenever situations like this do occur, it does lend towards lawyers on all parties looking to protect their interest for their most valuable assets. And so media companies, as well as colleges and universities and athletics, will look to make sure that they're covered in the scenario that may develop during the next contract cycle. And that's not uncommon. I think that professional sports would be looking to do the same. And college sports will follow suit. And as these contracts are negotiated and signed in the next 12, 18 months, I think there'll be language added so that there is protection. Work stoppage in pro sports has always been there, and the way that leagues and teams get compensated during those work stoppages has always been there from media companies. So I think now colleges and universities probably will follow suit and make sure that there is some major protection for their major assets, which is college football and to a lesser extent college basketball.
Right. I imagine the individual campuses in terms of these type of conversations are probably leaning hard on the conference offices because that's who, for the most part, makes the deal with these.
Exactly. No question. There I say what these college conferences are there for is no different than what the league offices are in the major professional sports to make sure that all their athletic directors understand, where they're at with their current agreements and then where they're heading with their next agreements and how can they band together as a conference to create opportunities and assets for their next negotiation, which you'll see that across the board with folks, and also which is no different than what these colleges and universities will be banding together to do so, not only on their asset, which is their own network, but also for the rights that they sell to other media companies.
Right. Well, Curt, this has been an excellent conversation. Let's both, you and I, hope that we don't go down the path and be optimistic that college football will definitely happen in 2020.
I totally agree. And perhaps it'll look differently than may have been in 2019, but and hopefully 2020 will be a season that people can band behind for all the right reasons and have a successful football season.
Right. Excellent. Well, I definitely appreciate you joining us here on the One Question Leadership Podcast.
All right. Thank you, Ty.
That was Curt Pires. He's a president of CAP Sports Group. And of course, this is Ty Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.